My own father's voice was the last sound I heard before the anesthesia pulled me under, and it wasn't a prayer or a word of love. It was a dry, logistical whisper to my sister, Olivia, just beyond the curtain. The transfer went through. Make sure it's in the offshore account before the market opens in Zurich. And Olivia's reply, crisp and devoid of all humanity, relax, Dad. By the time she wakes up, it'll just be a memory she can't quite reach. They thought I was already gone. The nurse had just said, count backwards from 10, Elena. I'd made it to 8. I heard every word. The inheritance from my grandfather, the one he'd left specifically for my children's future, for my medical bills, the one they'd sworn was tied up in probate, was being stolen. While I lay on a gurney, my body opened and vulnerable for a surgery that would hopefully remove the cancer they'd all been too busy to ask about, my family was conducting a financial execution. My mother sat in the corner, silent. Her complicity was a stain in the air. The betrayal wasn't a knife in the back, it was a sterile, precise excision of me from their story, performed without a scalpel, leaving no visible scar for the world to see. The last of my consciousness bled out not from fear of the operation, but from the absolute, howling vacuum of their love. And that was the moment I knew, the real revenge begins now. If you're drawn to intense, true-feeling stories of betrayal, revenge, and justice that cuts deep, make sure you subscribe to this channel. These stories only get darker from here. The rain on the window of my 5th-floor walk-up in Astoria wasn't weather, it was a permanent condition. It mirrored the slow, cold drip of the chemotherapy that had left me hollowed out, a ghost in my own skin. The twins, Chloe and Sam, were asleep in the next room, their breathing the only melody in a life that had become a discordant hum of pain and routine. A lowly teacher, that's what my father had always called me, the words a casual dismissal over Thanksgiving turkeys and Christmas cocktails. Elena's heart's in the right place, bless her, he'd say, but passion doesn't pay the premiums. Olivia, my older sister, was the star. A mergers and acquisitions attorney who moved through Manhattan like a sharpened blade, her success was the family currency, her cold elegance their reflected glory. My world was glue sticks and parent-teacher conferences, theirs was a glittering galaxy of power lunches and equity stakes. The cancer diagnosis had been an inconvenience, a narrative blip in their epic. Mom sent a bland, thinking of you, floral arrangement that looked assembled by a taxidermist. Dad offered to look at the numbers, but never did. Olivia was swamped with a takeover. I navigated surgery, recovery, and radiation with the help of friends, colleagues, and a debt that began to coil around my ankles like a leaden chain. The money from Grandpa Leo was supposed to be the lifeline. He was the only one who saw me. He'd been a teacher too, a history professor with chalk dust in his veins. They built skyscrapers, Elena, he'd whispered to me in his final days, his hand like parchment on mine. But you build souls. Yours is the heavier architecture. His will left the bulk of his estate, a surprising sum from wise investments, in a trust for my children, with a provision for my health and stability, to be managed by my father as executor. It was his old-world mistake, trusting blood to honor intent. After the surgery, after the haunting clarity of that overheard conversation faded into the morphine haze, I asked my father, timidly, about the trust. We were in my apartment, the kids were coloring at his feet, a cruel parody of a family scene. He sighed, putting down his phone where he'd been monitoring stocks. Elena, honey, Leo's estate is a labyrinth. Taxes, fees, illiquid assets. That money is essentially spectral. It exists, but it can't touch you. You need to focus on getting strong, not on fantasies. Olivia, who deigned to visit, swirled her mineral water. Dad's managing it responsibly. You should be grateful he's shielding you from the complexity. It's not like you'd understand the first thing about fiduciary duty. Her smile was a shard of ice. The humiliation was surgical. I, the supplicant, was being educated on my own ignorance while my children's future evaporated into a spreadsheet. That night, after they left with pats on the head and empty promises, I sat at my kitchen table, the cold linoleum biting through my socks. The rage wasn't fire, it was a black, frozen lake. I realized then that the betrayal in the hospital wasn't the climax. It was the foundation. They had built a world upon the assumption of my insignificance. And to break them, I would have to become a world they could not ignore. The revenge was not conceived in a flash of madness, but in the quiet, grinding hours of survival. It was a lesson plan. Objective, demonstrate, irrevocably, the weight of my architecture. I started with silence. I stopped calling. I let their texts go unanswered for days, then weeks. My mother's birthday came and went without a card. When my father finally showed up, unannounced, his knuckles rapping a staccato of irritation on my door, I met him with a placid emptiness that unsettled him. "We're worried about you, Elena. This isolation isn't healthy." I simply nodded, looking past him to where the twins were building a block tower. "We're fine. The architecture is sound." He left, confused. The silence was my first weapon. It denied them the narrative of the pathetic, needy sister. It forced them to write a new story, one where I was an unknown variable. Meanwhile, I taught. But I also wrote. My grandfather had left me more than a plundered trust. He'd left me his unpublished manuscripts, his life's work on the hidden histories of American labor movements. I spent my nights, fueled by a quiet fury and cheap coffee, weaving his scholarship with my own classroom experiences in a forgotten Bronx high school. The book was raw, academic but pulsating with the heartbeats of my students, the undocumented girl fighting for valedictorian, the boy in foster care who found solace in Whitman's lines. I called it the gravity of chalk. I sent the proposal to a single publisher, a small but respected press known for impactful nonfiction. The acceptance letter came on a day when the electricity was about to be shut off. The advance was modest, but it was a vote of confidence from the universe that my family had denied me. The book's publication was a pebble dropped in a pond far from the glittering ocean of my family's attention. It got respectful reviews in educational journals. Then, a professor at Columbia assigned it. A talk I gave at a library was attended by a producer from PBS. My story, the fusion of Leo's history and my present, resonated. It was about voice, about the unseen structures that hold society together. I was invited onto a local morning show, then a podcast. Each small appearance was a brick I laid in secret, away from their sight. My family, orbiting in their high-altitude world of finance and law, remained blissfully unaware. My mother called once, having heard from a vague acquaintance that they thought they saw Elena on TV, but I merely said it must have been a mistake, a case of mistaken identity. Probably, she'd sighed, relieved. "I can't imagine what you'd be on television for." The poison in that statement was its casualness. It was the ethos of my life with them distilled into a single, offhand remark. The catalyst was, as it often is, an old man's love. Grandpa Leo, it turned out, was a better strategist than any of us knew. A week before the PBS documentary was set to air, a full-hour feature on the crisis and resilience of public education, with the gravity of chalk and my classroom at its center, a thick, legal envelope arrived from a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a letter and a small, sleek digital audio recorder. The letter was from Leo's personal attorney, a man my father had fired as executor. Leo suspected, the letter read. He was a sentimental man, but not a foolish one. He had me install a system in his study after his first stroke. Voice activated. He wanted a record of the true conversations, in case his mind began to slip. He forgot about it. I did not. After his passing, I retrieved this. I was bound by client confidentiality until the estate was fully adjudicated. It no longer is. This is not a matter of law, Elena. It is a matter of justice. My hands were numb as I pressed play. The audio was crystal clear. It was my father and Olivia, visiting Leo 3 days before he died. His voice was frail, but theirs were vibrant with greed. "Dad, the trust for Elena is a noble gesture, but it's a waste," Olivia argued, her tone all reason. "She's emotionally fragile. That money will be gone in a year, spent on organic baby food and socialist textbooks. Let us restructure. We can create a fund that we administer. She gets an allowance. It's cleaner." My father, chiming in, "She's just a teacher, Leo. She doesn't have the capacity for this kind of capital. Olivia can make it work for the family. For all of us." There was a long silence, filled only with the sound of Leo's labored breathing. Then, his voice, a whisper of profound disappointment. "You have no idea what you are dismissing. You never did. Do what you want. You always have." The click of the recorder ending was the sound of a cell door slamming shut on my past. He had given them the rope, and they had woven it into a noose for me, all while confessing their crime into the one ear that would ultimately hear it. The night of the PBS premiere, American Mosaic, The Teachers Who Hold the Sky, I didn't tell a soul. I made popcorn for the twins. We wore matching pajamas. I sat between them on our worn sofa, their small, warm bodies pressed against mine, as the national feed began. The opening shot was a slow pan across my classroom, over the earnest, beautiful faces of my students, then settling on me, helping a boy deconstruct a sonnet. The narration was reverent. It spoke of sacrifice, of intellectual passion, of being the last line of defense for a democracy. It interwove my grandfather's research with my work. It showed me at home, with Chloe and Sam, talking about why their mom's job mattered. It was a portrait of a life of meaning. My phone began to vibrate. Then it exploded. Texts, calls, emails. Former students, colleagues, friends. The noise was a joyous roar. I let it buzz on the table, a distant beehive. I was waiting for one specific call. It came 20 minutes after the program ended. My father's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 7 times. I needed him to picture me, not answering, sitting in the glow of my own undeniable reality. I picked up. I said nothing. "Elena." His voice was a strained mix of awe and fury. What was that?" More silence from me. "That was a national broadcast. They said you wrote a book. They called you a leading intellectual voice. Why didn't you tell us?" I could hear my mother weeping in the background, a theatrical, confused sound. Olivia's voice, sharp, snapped, "Give me the phone." The line rustled. "Elena, this is a spectacular bit of image crafting." "Really? PBS? Who's your PR firm? You must be swimming in debt to afford this." Her attempt to reframe my success as another form of my weakness was instinctive, desperate. I finally spoke, my voice calm, flat, a placid sea over a trench. "There's no PR firm, Olivia. Just gravity. It's what happens when you build something real. It attracts mass." "Don't be cryptic," she spat. "Do you have any idea how this makes us look? Like we're not a supportive family." I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. "You're not a supportive family. You're a criminal syndicate. A small, petty one." A stunned silence. Then my father, having grabbed the phone back. "What did you say to me?" "I have Grandpa Leo's audio recorder," I said, every word a brick laid with precision. "The one from his study. The one where you and Olivia convince a dying man to disinherit his granddaughter because she's just a teacher, without the capacity for capital. The one where you outline the plan to steal the twins' trust and funnel it to an offshore account. The one you had your about during my surgery. I've made copies. I've sent one to the Bar Association's Ethics Committee. Another to the SEC. A third is with my grandfather's old attorney, who is very much alive and very interested in filing a civil suit for malfeasance and fraud. The silence on the other end was no longer stunned. It was the silence of a vacuum, of air rushing out of a punctured spaceship. It was the sound of a world ending. "Elena, baby," my father gasped. "You don't understand the pressure, the markets, we were going to give you a share." "You are a lowly financier," I said, the term dripping with the weight of his own lifelong dismissal. "And you, Olivia, are just a corrupt lawyer. You have no architecture. You only have facades. And I have the blueprint to the foundations. I suggest you hire a very good lawyer. But not you, Olivia. You'll be too busy defending your own license to practice." I didn't hang up. I placed the phone gently on the table, walked to the window, and looked out at the rain-washed city. The neon signs glowed like distant, indifferent stars. I could still hear the tiny, distorted screams coming from the speaker on the table, the sound of two people realizing that the invisible, insignificant woman they'd built their fortune upon had just pulled the cornerstone from their world. In the other room, my children slept, safe, their future no longer a phantom in a Zurich account. The revenge was not in the shouting, or the scandal, though those would come. The revenge was in the quiet. It was in the unassailable fact of my existence, finally, gloriously, towering over the wreckage of their contempt. It was in knowing that from now on, whenever anyone said my name, it would be with a respect they could never again touch, and their own names would be whispers, followed by a slow, understanding shake of the head.